Welcome to Share, stories of hope, adaptation, resilience, and empowerment. I'm your host, Holly. Thank you for joining us today. Cancer can lead to a lifetime of finding balance. Join us as we discuss emotional well-being and survivorship. Joining me today are Casey, Alfredo, Matt, and Samantha. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for being here. Well, for any patient, getting to a cancer diagnosis can be really very scary. So it's normal for patients to feel anxious and sad. And there's a normal adjustment to the diagnosis, but some patients have more significant symptoms, especially when patients might have had some depression or anxiety mixed into having a cancer diagnosis. So it's really important to recognize some of those symptoms and feelings and talk about our topic today, which is mental health and emotional well-being. Casey, I wanted to start with you. What does emotional well-being mean to you?
It means everything to me, to be honest. Our physical body is very capable of getting through a lot of things and can endure a lot, but our state of mind and how you think and feel every single day matters. And that's what's going to drive the conversation for that day, every day. So for me, emotional well-being is mentally, physically, and emotionally making sure that I feel good every day, right? And when you're extremely anxious and you're in survival mode for most of treatment, you literally are only able to focus on so many things, and the control is completely lost on your part. So you try to do the best you can and survive and get through it. And you just grit and bear what that experience is. And then for me now, as a survivor, it is more important how I think and feel every single day. I don't want to feel anxious. I don't want to feel afraid. I don't want to feel like my life has ended. I want to feel good. And when you're able to do that and get out of that mode of survival, of fear and anxiety, for me, I've been able to bring more joy, more light, more happiness, more laughter, more giggles, more play. And that means everything to me.
Yeah, definitely. Matt, you've had quite an experience with your cancer journey and really just surpassed that 2-year mark in your survivorship. So I congratulate you on that. And I want to ask you the same thing. What does emotional well-being mean to you?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I think sort of the widely accepted definition of it is really how well somebody balances or manages all these emotions with different situations, both good and bad. So you're dealing with a lot of good and bad emotions at the same time. For me, I think that my emotional well-being is dynamic. It's always changing. When I think about my emotional well-being, when I was first diagnosed, that was very different than how I am today. When I got diagnosed, I was more in a state of shock and sadness and disbelief because, I was 25, I was healthy. Nobody expects this type of diagnosis. But once I started to get a little bit more information about my disease and potential treatment options and hearing that this is something that people are beating, I think that's when my emotional well-being started to become more balanced. And I started to just think about all the positives that could come from a situation like this. My belief is they're all around us. It just depends on how you look at them and how much effort you want to put into finding them. Once I started to find all of these great things that were coming from this sort of diagnosis, I think that's when my emotional well-being started to become more balanced.
Yeah. Samantha, you have a really compelling story as well. And of course, with any cancer diagnosis, you have all kinds of feelings that come up. And I thank you for sharing your story with me. What does emotional well-being mean to you?
Yeah, emotional well-being is incredibly important for me. Back in the days when I was diagnosed at the age of 22, of course, I didn't know anything about emotional well-being. I was scared, but fast forward so many years, I think emotional well-being is extremely important and it helps keep me grounded and in check. we have a very different lifestyle in this era. We are amidst a chaos of emotions, and we go through a varied experiences in our life every day. And amidst that, how do we stay positive, encouraged? How do we not feel so anxious? Or because, as I said, we go through so many different experiences in our life, it's very easy to get into all those emotional experiences. So for me, it's also very important to, be surrounded with the right set of people who actually supports you, uplifts you, gives you that courage, that positivity. I wouldn't want to stay around people who always complain or about petty things, because, we see life in a very different way as compared to others. So, yeah.
Now, Alfredo, you were diagnosed at a younger age. And what would you say is different about being diagnosed at such a young age into your young adulthood?
For me, it came as a surprise because, like Matt kind of said, in that moment, like, a lot of emotions are hitting you, like shock, sadness, anger. So you probably don't even know, like, what to feel in that moment. You're just like, what do I do? I still remember when one of my doctors said a diagnosis at like cancer is equally a mental battle just as much as it is physically.
Yep.
I echo that as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is.
And definitely adding on this extra layer of when you all were diagnosed, you're transitioning really in this crucial time from childhood to adulthood. So did it feel like you had to grow up quickly and understand what was happening to you?
I think I was diagnosed when I was 31, so you're still trying to figure out who you are. You're checking boxes of life, but you don't really know who you are. And so for me to be diagnosed, this was the gift that I got, was I know who I am now. And I think that gave me a lot of clarity that I didn't have when I was in my 20s, because you're just going through life and trying to just like be on solid ground for a while. And so that it's giving me that opportunity to find who I am and be so solid in that.
I was diagnosed in 22. I had no clue. I just knew the word cancer and the fear that came with it. I was so naive, I remember. It makes me laugh now. I asked my oncologist, because at the time, basically he said that, Simi, you have got cancer. And the first question, I asked the oncologist was, am I going to be able to wear my lipstick? Because will it give me a reaction? This is how naive I was. And we didn't have a Dr. Google at that time, thank God. Because at that time we didn't have Dr. Google. And of course, all I had to do was to follow instructions of my oncologist. And of course, my father, he being an ENT surgeon and was the one who actually diagnosed my cancer. All I had to do was follow the instructions. And all my questions were directed to them and to the experts, who also had the compassion and not just reading through what is going to happen to me and then just perceiving it and interpreting it the way I would want to, right? So I think that was the assuring part for me from that journey into where I am now.
Yeah, I was diagnosed at 25, just 2 years ago. I did Division I athletics in college, so I was in the best shape of my life. And I think that became sort of the hidden major benefit of all of this, was your body is just more resilient in your 20s or even younger. They talk about, the survival rate for children is really good because they can handle these really tough treatments. For me, I remember asking my doctors, going through full body radiation, which they don't do for a lot of people, how I'd be able to handle it. And I got the answer of, I think you're still here because of your age and your just general physical fitness. And I pushed myself when I was in the hospital to walk laps and to walk more laps the next day and more laps the next day. And I think that made all the difference for me. But, on the other side of things, you're just getting your life started. I had just come out of a job where I was figuring out if I really loved it or not. Then everything changes for you and you look towards the future and figure out what you really want to do. And I see it as sort of an exciting time. It's like a clean slate, and I don't think many people get that at this age, to just start fresh and say, you go out and do whatever you want to do. You are young. You have many years ahead of you. So that's how I saw it. There were definitely some negatives, but a lot of positives too.
So you all spent some time in the hospital, and of course, it's not hard to talk about COVID because some of you were affected during that time, especially Alfredo. I had the opportunity to learn about your story, and you spent quite a long time in the hospital alone. So what are some of the things that you found that were really helpful through those hard times to really boost your mental health?
You could say I looked in many different areas, like from talking with my parents, hearing music, just watching maybe funny videos on YouTube. But of course, being that my parents couldn't be with me in the hospital, they did eventually learn they could send me stuff from home. So they started sending me some stuff. And my dad, one of the last things he ever got me before he passed away, it was like this Spider-Man plushie that I started calling him my homie there, because I pretty much said this Spider-Man plushie got me through so many days in that hospital.
Yeah.
It kind of like, I would say like my parents can't be here with me, but knowing this came from them, it feels like there's a piece of them here with me.
And you shared with me too the loss of your father during your stay in the hospital. Could you share with us a little bit about your story?
I could still remember it well. January 22, 2021. A few days after my transplant. And of course, my doctors had already been telling me like, your lab count's starting to rise. Some were saying, but maybe it's just like a little spark that'll go out. It didn't. So my doctors that day on the 22nd, they came to my room and they told me personally, like, your lab counts have been rising well, like more than we were expecting. So we believe you're actually well enough for us to send you home this Saturday. And I hearing those words, I was so excited. The first person I wanted to tell was my dad. So I call him up, but no answer. Of course, I didn't really think nothing of it. So I'm thinking, he's probably busy. He'll call back later. It's like fast forward later, it's like 4 or 5 in the afternoon already. I look at my phone, nothing from my dad. And I'm just like, nah, something's going on now. And then a few minutes later, a nurse comes in with my mom. And I'm like, well, this is a surprise. And after the nurse, like, I guess, talked with my mom about, like, some of my in-home care after I go home, my mom drops the bomb on me. They got the news that my dad was finishing his dialysis treatment, and right as he was checking out, like, I guess he got a bit of a heart attack right there, and he didn't make it then and there. And I felt like it was a double hit for me because I'm over here still stuck in a hospital and I can't get out. And I just got the news that my dad passed away. In that moment, I guess you could say some of those dark emotions started to creep into me. Like, okay, I just lost my dad just a day, just literally the day my doctors told me I'm about to be sent home the following day. And then to top off, a day after I reach my 6-month mark, one day after reaching that mark in my recovery, I lose my older brother. And right there, I just started thinking like, I'm scared now. The day my doctors tell me that I'm gonna go home on Saturday, I lose my dad. The day after I reach my 6-month mark in my recovery, I lose my older brother. And I just start thinking, what else am I gonna lose once I make the full year? I honestly didn't know what to do, but somehow I found some way to pretty much quote a song that I kind of started listening a lot. I Will Not Break.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I found a way to just push through and keep going. But I won't lie, there's some days where the pain is a little bit more than the day it actually happened. But on other days, like, I believe like Matt said, like, not a lot of people actually get blessed with a second chance. Yeah. So I guess you could say I'm trying to use the second chance that I was blessed with to try to do something.
Yeah. And holding on to those fond memories in these really tough and hard times too will help you, get through. But thank you so much for sharing your story, and just know that we have a community out here of people who really understand what you've been through from a cancer aspect. And that's what we're doing with this whole show, is to really build that community out there, that you're not alone. And it's tough enough going through a cancer diagnosis, but then losing family members at the same time. What are those resources that you can really utilize and dive into to make sure that you are also taking care of yourself first? So thank you for sharing that. Casey, you have had a wild ride with your journey as well, and I wanted to dive into your story too, because you also spent a lot of time really on that edge of wondering if you are going to be here tomorrow.
Yeah, I spent a total of 168 days in the hospital. Not all at once, but it really was taking back the little bit of control that you could mentally every day. 4 months into my treatment, I had a stroke and seizures. So I was temporarily paralyzed on my left side. I had to really learn how to walk and function and use this entire side of my body again, as well as cognitive abilities, because a stroke basically, like, your brain doesn't work the same. So I spent a lot of time after that for 8 weeks, 3 hours every single day, 5 days a week, learning how to walk, talk, think all over again. You have no sense of control because you're asking for help to do basic functions, like sit up. And so you feel helpless. And that's really a vulnerable place to be, a humbling place to be. Yeah. And I never want to endure that again in that way. But really, the longest stay was towards the end of my journey. And I was going on day 60-something, and this is when I had exhausted all options. Chemotherapy was no longer working. An immunotherapy failed. I was going to go on a clinical trial. It was shut down. And literally, because of LLS and the research that they do is the reason why I'm alive. The Leukemia and Lymphoma Society annual doctors conference had just ended, and they came back and said, do you want to try this immunotherapy? And at the time, was not for my cancer. It was for a different cancer. And I said, well, considering what happened the last time that I tried an immunotherapy and almost killed me, I'm not really sure. Can we think about it? The research was 2 pages. There's 114 participants. 11 had the cancer that I had, and the outcomes were terrible, to be honest. And I sat and I thought, and I said, well, if it helps somebody, then my life at least is not for nothing. And so we wrote a letter of compassion to the FDA and to the drug manufacturer to get access to the drug. 4 rounds of that immunotherapy got me into remission, stem cell transplant, relapsed again about 6 months later. And then that immunotherapy, we did again to then do another stem cell transplant, but it ended up that my team just said, we're going to wait and see what happens. And I was like, this is a terrible plan, but okay, I'm not in a hospital, so I'll take it. And since then, I've been in remission, and I'm going on 7 years. But those 168 days, it's literally like Matt had mentioned, like I was doing laps around the unit. 17 laps were a mile. I would do 20 minutes on a recumbent bike, which is now why I can never use a recumbent bike. Just mentally, it's like torture. You take back the little pieces of control that you can.
Yeah.
They would do rounds every morning, and I would say, no, this is my time. I'm working out, I'm exercising. I'm like, I'll get there when I'm done.
So would you say that, in your toolkit of things to use to really keep up on mental well-being, did exercise really help you to just have a routine and just feel that sense of normalcy?
Yes, 100%. I always say movement was my therapy.
Yeah. And Matt, for you, being a D1 athlete as well, did you have the strength? Was that something that, being so active physically beforehand and then, fighting for your life the next day, was that something that really took a big mental toll on you?
Yeah, it was. And something that helped keep me motivated, call it a tool in my toolkit, was my parents printed out pictures of me pole vaulting from college. And I hung them in the hospital room, and we had other stuff in there, just decorations to make it feel kind of like home. But those are the pictures I looked at for, 70 collective days that I was in the hospital. I brought those pictures with me everywhere. And it just reminded me about, how far I'd gone in my athletic background, and I can keep going through this. There's a way to do that. But it took a hard toll on my body because, I don't have a lot of weight to deal with in the first place. I've always been a small guy, so I went from like 160 pounds down to like 120 after I did the full body radiation, and it was really hard to get out of bed. Some days I would do just one lap, and that was all I could do, and my bones hurt and my body hurt, and I was just really frustrated. It was definitely a loss of identity for me, but you start from the bottom, and you tell yourself, don't be embarrassed if you have to pick up a 1 pound weight, and that's where you start. And then tomorrow it'll be a 2 pound weight, and the next day it'll be 3 laps. And that's where I started. I just started from the bottom and built myself all the way back up. And I'd say even just now, 2 years post-diagnosis, 1.5 years post-transplant, I'm still building, but I feel really good again. And so I think for the other people out there that are going to watch this, be kind to yourself. It takes time. And if you have to start at the bottom, don't be embarrassed. Don't think about what other people think at all. This is your journey. And you just got to take it really day by day. Yeah.
So find those little things, those sentiments that really bring you joy. Finding exercise to make it a routine. Taking things in bite-sized chunks are all really good pieces of information for those out there watching who may be starting their cancer experience and just don't know what to do or where to turn to. And you brought up a really good thing as well, which is body image. A lot of people don't think of body image being in the category of emotional well-being and mental health, but let's be real and honest. This is a thing that affects all of us every single day, no matter who you are or what state of health you're in. So how did body image affect you during your cancer diagnosis? Samantha?
I hated it. I hated my body. I hated looking myself in the mirror. Right before the diagnosis, I won 2 beauty pageants. Wow. So
That's amazing.
I have 2 crowns, one for the state and one for Miss East India. And I was about to pursue my modeling. And so coming from the glam and glitz world at such a young age, right? You're already on the spotlight, and then you encounter cancer. And then, of course, going through that whole chemotherapy, losing hair. Luckily, I did not lose a lot of hair. I was in a clinical trial, so they didn't give me the full chemo. So I still had a little bit of hair, but not completely gone. But then came the radiation, and that's when it started to hit me because I was sore, I had burns, I hated looking myself in the mirror. Literally hated. I would just be like, I don't want to see my body. It was difficult. It was very difficult for me to even understand that, okay, this will get better, this will heal. But, I had so many questions. Can somebody, still see me as that, beauty pageant crown holder, right? Am I still going to look the same as I was?
Your perception of who you were, if you want to call it who you were before cancer, and your perception of who you are during treatment can be frightening to some people. So, Casey, what were your experiences with body image?
It was a roller coaster, to say the least. I didn't like looking in the mirror. I didn't like the way I looked. I lost a lot of weight. I gained a lot of weight. That's another thing that I didn't know was happening because of all the steroids they put me on. I gained 30 pounds, and I've never been that heavy, and carrying it was uncomfortable. And none of my clothes fit, and I looked like a chipmunk. And, so you've got this idea of who you're supposed to look like, and then every time you look in the mirror, it's not you. And it's very jarring to the senses because you're like, oh, that's me? And, now I feel like I look like me again, but it's a roller coaster because you're like, this is not who I am. This is not who I think I should look like outwardly to the world.
Remember my question to the doctor about how lipstick wouldn't have impacted? You know what I did? I used to actually put dark red lipstick, and it made me feel so good.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
If I'm low, if some days, I'm like, I'm not feeling quite right, I wear that dark red lipstick and some fragrance. I feel really amazing.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
She talks about like an up and down, and it's especially true because this treatment path is long. So you do induction, your hair falls out, and then it comes back. And then you do consolidation, and then it falls out again, and then it comes back. And then you do another round of consolidation, and then it comes back. And then you do transplant, and it all falls out again. But those little in-betweens where your hair comes back, I mean, for me, I looked like Eminem. I had like really, really blonde, short hair. And some people liked it, and then it would fall out again. And I would like hold on to that little bit of hair that would come back on my face or whatever. And when it fell out again, that's what that roller coaster was for me, which I know can be hard for a lot of people. But specifically, my girlfriend at the time, now my fiance, she loved me for who I was. And she never saw me any differently when I was completely bald. And I think that having somebody in my life that just didn't see a difference. I mean, I wore a lot of hats. I became a hat guy, which I wasn't before. And she loved me with hats on. She loved me without hats. And that to me was a huge boost. And what got me through is to have somebody that said, it's okay. I don't see you any differently. So if you have somebody in your life like that, it can make a huge difference.
Yeah, yeah. So, cancer survivorship. A lot of people feel misunderstood at times, and we each had separate conversations earlier about where you are in your survivorship. So what do you think most people misunderstand about cancer survivorship, not only during your diagnosis and your treatment, but post-treatment? What are those things that come to mind that you're just like, mentally, emotionally, I wish people would still understand?
For me, I would say on some days, like, I guess the emotions, the pain of the day that it happened, sometimes it feels like a little bit more than the day it actually did happen. So, like, I feel like maybe some people just think like, oh, you already went through it, so come on, just keep it going. But for me, like, okay, it's easy for you to say that, but because you're just viewing it from the outside, I'm actually the person that went through that. I didn't learn about LLS until after my transplant. I was already 2 years cancer-free when I first met people of LLS, so I learned about them afterwards.
So really tapping into those resources early, utilizing your social worker or your case manager in the hospital to see what type of resources are out there to help build your community, help strengthen your mental health. Would you agree that those are some things that you would really recommend to people to really source out early?
Oh, yeah, definitely. One of the things that I kind of do as a volunteer with LLS, I guess kind of hits a little home for me because what I do is I go to the infusion center where I was also a patient there, and inform like the patients there about LLS, what it is, what services they offer. Using my own experience, like I feel like there's many other Latinos out there that like are probably going through the same thing, if not something similar, and probably don't know where to turn or where to ask for help. So I guess I'd like to use my experience, my story as a way for them to see like, hey, there is help out there. It's not just you who's going through this or who went through this.
Yeah, yeah. And Matt, for you, you were now at a time where you're thinking about jumping back into a career, and you shared some stories earlier of kind of being misunderstood in you are not the person that you were a couple of years ago. Can you share your story with us on what you feel is misunderstood in cancer survivorship?
Yeah, I think that, to no one's fault, the people who haven't experienced this, they just don't really understand what the healing journey is for patients and survivors. I think people think that the healing stops when the treatments stop, or when the blood test comes back clean, or when the scan comes back clean, but it's just so far from the truth. I think healing will be for the rest of my life. I don't know if it will be for you guys, if you share a similar sentiment, but I would bet that that's probably pretty similar for a lot of people who've been through this. It's not just about the anxiety about a relapse, which I think about every day, or secondary cancer coming from treatment that I had before, but loss of identity, figuring out what I really want to do. And as I'm looking for, kind of a career switch, I had a lot of people in my life think that that was just a poor decision, and that I should go back to what I was doing before because it's the safer option. But when I think about the chances of me being here, I'll go back a little bit. I was born in Russia, and I was adopted at 18 months old, came to California. The chances of that are so small. And then the chances of getting diagnosed with AML, very, very small. The chances of surviving it and getting a cord blood transplant, having some issues with finding a donor, also really, really small. And then to be here, it's like, I think about what's the purpose of all of this? Probably not to go back to doing what I was doing before, something that I sort of enjoyed but didn't really love. Life is short. I think people should do what they're interested in, and they should do it now. And if it fails, that's okay. But that's where I'm at, which is I'm trying to figure out how I can be involved in this community, make it part of my career, and give back to an industry that gave me so much through my own treatment journey. And you just have to learn to give certain people passes and understand that they don't quite understand, and shape your own opinions. And this is your life, and life is short, so you should do what you really want to do. And that's kind of where I'm at right now.
Yeah, there's no promise for tomorrow, right, for us. And at that time, I just finished my engineering. All my friends were writing their GREs to come here to the United States. I was diagnosed in India, and I also wanted to come. But here I am getting chemotherapy and losing my hair and losing my mind over what's going to happen next. As soon as I was done with my treatment, my parents, of course, my dad, who is an ENT surgeon, he was the one who diagnosed my cancer. He made one thing very clear, that this is your life. You have to own it. You have to do what you want to do. That's what Matt just said. At the same time, so my dad wanted me to, pursue my higher studies. And he said, if you want to go write your GRE, if you want to go to the United States to pursue your master's, go for it. And on the other hand, my mom is like, are you kidding? And my grandparents were like, what are you doing? You being a doctor, you're the one who diagnosed her and you're sending her away? He's like, yeah, because else she won't be who she wants to be. And, looking back, and of course, I was determined. I couldn't study for my master's because I couldn't retain anything. Of studying for these national tests. These are hard ones, right? But somehow, I think I had the courage and the determination that I'm not going to break. Somebody said here, right? You mentioned the song that I don't give up. And till date, I don't give up. And I wrote a national test, and out of several hundred students who competed, I was one of those 30. And then I got into a master's program in India. US was a little bit too far stretched. My mom said, no, not happening. But I was still away from home, and I was in my 2 years. So I could have been in that, relapse journey. And my grandparents were completely against me, my dad. They were like, I don't know what he's doing. He doesn't understand. My dad said, no, she has to go. And here I am. If I hadn't taken that chance, I wouldn't have finished my master's. I came here, I did my MBA, I have another life of my entertainment career. I wouldn't have been able to do anything. And I'm wearing so many different hats. I wouldn't be able to push myself out of that comfort zone. So if I can do it, I think anyone can do it.
So really,
Absolutely.
if you have those bigger dreams and hopes, don't let your diagnosis stray you away
Yeah.
from your dreams.
Yeah, as they say, right, where there is a will, there is always a way. And I completely believe that. And there is no tomorrow for me. So everything has to happen today. So, some of them, they say, so Simi, you're very aggressive. Yeah, sometimes if I have to push myself out of that comfort zone, I better be. Because for me, I don't know what tomorrow looks like for me.
Yeah, definitely. Casey, I know for you, you really had this change of career and an epiphany on what you wanted to do. And I think that is so powerful in having these moments where you can find joy again in what you're doing. So can you tell us what you are up to now?
Yeah, because I believe like cancer survivorship is a lifelong journey. The minute you are diagnosed, your life is different going forward, period. And it's forever. And it's learning how to walk with this journey and learning how to walk with cancer. And so it doesn't guide you, push you, or pull you. You're walking side by side with it. And why I do what I do. I came from corporate America and I was like, I cannot go back and sit in a cube and do a 2-hour daily commute and do all of these things that really mean nothing to me. And I could have, that would have been the safe route. That's what my parents wanted, my dad wanted me to do because it's safe for them, right? I have insurance, I have all these things, guarantees. And I chose to become a trauma-informed cancer coach because when I survived, I literally had a nervous breakdown. And I was flailing. I was miserable. I was terrified every day. I would wake up and go, am I going to die today? I was doing some really weird things like wearing the same clothing, eating the same thing because I was so paranoid that was the day I was going to get the news that I was going to die again. And so I'm like, I'm not living. This isn't living. And so I had this really, one question that was asked was, if you only had 6 months to live, would you be happy the way you're living? And I was like, no. And that's when I just burnt everything that I had down and started to rebuild. And it's why I do what I do, because you literally sometimes have to start from scratch and rebuild the house all over again in a different way, in a better way, in a sound way that's more what you want. And I think that in order to live a good life for who that individual is, it's got to be your life.
Yeah. So community is a really important thing to have surrounded by you, no matter what is happening with you in your life. You could be, someone like me who has never had a cancer diagnosis, and, I still feel like I need my community surrounding me during the good times and the bad times. So were you able to build a community and connect with other survivors, during your treatment and even now? And what does that community look like for you?
I think the power of social media was amazing. I got to a point where I was really desperate to find other people who had gone through this. And the first person I ever met with was a referral from my doctor. It was a patient of hers who was 2 years ahead of me. He had been through his transplant. He had the same diagnosis and the same mutation, and he was doing really well. And that's what I wanted to see. That's what my parents wanted to see, was instead of read a pamphlet or look at, an internet website about what transplant is like, we wanted to see a success story living and breathing and looking really well. And that's what he was able to provide to me. And then I started to go to Instagram and search hashtags, hashtag AML, hashtag stem cell transplant. And you see the not so good stuff and you see the really amazing stuff. And the fact that you're able to connect with somebody in New York when you're in California and they're tracking their stem cell transplant journey and you can just shoot them a message. I did plenty of that. And I started to build this small little community of folks all around the country. And we're all still friends today, which I think is really cool. But it was very, very useful to me to be able to talk to somebody who really understood what we were all going through.
And what a gift to, live in this time where we have that ability to pick up our phones and connect with someone that really resonates for you. And in the same time, I'm sure it felt good for you to get out of your own head for a minute and root for someone else who knows what you're going through as well.
Yeah, and when I started volunteering and they asked me to connect with other patients, it was the first time in my treatment journey that I felt useful again. I lost a lot of purpose in my life and figured, what do I do now and how can I be useful to the world and to other people? And they said, this is how you can be useful. Go talk to this guy, go talk to her. They're going through this and you're past it. You can be that person that, I looked for when I first got diagnosed. And I still do volunteer work today where I, meet with patients who are newly diagnosed, and almost all of us are friends today. It's really amazing.
Yeah, that's awesome. Alfredo, what did your community look like, those people who uplifted you during those really tough mental times?
Being that my whole situation started during the COVID pandemic, my community was pretty much just initially my parents, my mom, my dad, and then my sister. And then, of course, anyone who knew about me, which like friends, neighbors, even my old boss from my old job. So hearing that other people who probably didn't know me that well, like I said, even my boss from my old job, he was even saying he was praying for me. Like seeing all these different people come together and say, oh, we're praying for you. We're praying for you. Stay strong. So my community started just small like that with my family. But I feel like maybe it started expanding a little more when I first met the people of LLS. Because in addition to becoming a volunteer with them, I also became a volunteer with one of the programs they offer, the First Connection.
As you mentioned, our wonderful First Connection program where you can be matched with someone going through or who has been through a similar situation as you. So I really, want to implore everybody to go out there and utilize those wonderful resources that do exist. Has anyone utilized a survivor group before?
I have in the context of LLS and the night. That's technically a survivors group.
Yeah, right. LLS Light the Night.
So, and that is, even if you are not a blood cancer survivor, it is a powerful event. And it is something that I think everyone should attend. It is a beautiful event. Yeah. It's one of my favorites among many.
Yeah. I really enjoyed the Light the Night event when I got to be a part of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a very special connection with the Light the Night because we did the Bay Area event, right? Yeah. The Light the Night event, and I got to host that event. I have been doing shows and performing in front of so many thousands and thousands of people, but that was the first event I think I was so contented. I felt like I did something really cool. I am up in the auditoriums in front of 50,000 people performing, doing this and that, but that event that pulled, I think about 2,000-ish people probably, watching them hold those lights, those lanterns, listening to their stories. That was so, it was a humbling moment for me. I will never forget that.
Of course, yeah. Another thing that I want to talk about is change. So things that you may have changed during your cancer diagnosis. Are there things, Casey, that you can describe that you've noticed have changed within you since your diagnosis of cancer?
Yes, prior to cancer, I would say I was checking the boxes of life, career, family, house, all of those things, because that's what we're supposed to do, right? And so I'm a completely 180 degree of a person from that. I'm probably a lot lighter, a lot happier, a lot more joy is brought into my life. Went from corporate America, very structured, to I'm a trauma-informed cancer coach. I work for myself, and I moved across the country to a brand new city where I knew no one, and I could not be a more different person in such a great way.
Yeah. Alfredo, you are in school right now, so that's one really great thing that's changed. But what are some other things that have changed for you since your diagnosis?
Well, before I was diagnosed, I was, I guess you could say, the typical 24-year-old kid, like, had a job that he thought was decent, went to work, went back home, didn't really think not much of it. Like, oh, this just like this seems to be like my go-to, like, for life now. But then when the diagnosis hits, you kind of feel like, okay, the life I had been building up to this point now all of a sudden comes to a stop. I know I could probably never go back to being the Alfredo that I was at 24 and before being diagnosed. But now with everything that I went through, I feel like it's kind of now a whole 180. Life is short. You don't really know when your last day on this world is going to be. So enjoy your life while you have it. Like, be with your family, be with your loved ones. Like, try the things you want to do. Like, maybe push yourself to get out of that comfort zone. I still go back to one thing my doctor told me. He said the point of the point of your transplant was to get you back into the world. Like, what's going to be the point if, like, okay, you get the transplant, but you just stay in the same spot you are? So I guess you could say a little push from my doctors and, like, push from my mom and my sister to get me out of that comfort zone. It's kind of what also helped me. And like I said, now I'm currently going to school to eventually try to get into a medical assistant program. During my time as a patient, both in regular hospital and then the cancer hospital, I was under the care of many great nurses, many great doctors. This is my kind of way of trying to give thanks or pay it forward.
Yeah. That change is a big word for you.
Yeah, and I think we've all sort of had like a sneak peek into mortality at an early age. And with that, I think just comes with all of life's greatest lessons, which I know, Alfredo, you hit on all the important points. Doing what you want to do. Life is short. And I've done a lot of changing in my life, I think for the better. I like the person I am now. I liked my old self before, but I think I like this version of myself better. I am doing things that I wouldn't have done before. Instead of worrying about maybe money or do I have time to do this or what might other people think of this, like, who cares? This is your life.
Oh, yeah.
Your life is short.
Definitely.
You should do what you want. So I think I've changed for the better, but also I just find so much joy. So, yeah.
Samantha, you are just, I don't know when you sleep because you are a woman of many hats. You are well known in the music industry. And I think that really, attests to your father supporting you to evolve into the person that you want to be today.
Yeah, I love this version of me so much. I think it's because it came out of that journey I went through. As I mentioned, right after my beauty pageant days, I was in a different bubble, like glam, glitz, spotlight, and then suddenly this whole thing hit me. And then it completely transformed to who I am. And I appreciate the biggest change that happened in this transformation journey was I appreciate everyone, no matter where you come from, what culture, I appreciate everything. I just embrace everything the way it comes to me. But as I said earlier, where there's a will, there's always a way. I wanted to be an engineer. I wanted to do my master's. I wanted to do MBA. And I wanted to be on stage. I wanted to perform in front of 50,000 people. I manifested, and I worked towards it. Nothing stopped me because I had that will. I wanted to go there. So I chose my path and I crafted that journey. And not giving up. Stay determined and positive and love yourself.
Yeah. So I have a really important question for everybody. If you could go back to those first moments of your cancer diagnosis, what advice would you give yourself?
How would you tell your past self, like, hey, in a few years, you're going to be diagnosed with this major illness that's going to completely change your life? I don't really know how I would go about saying that. If it wasn't for those experiences, I kind of wouldn't be the person who I am now. Maybe, like, try to take each moment how you can. but maybe just don't fully let it get to you, you know? Like don't let the emotion overwhelm you. Because like I had my days where where the emotion would overwhelm me. Like the day that I first started to see that I started to lose my hair. Oh, that day starting to see like the first clumps fall off, I was like, wow, this really is happening.
Yeah. What advice would you give yourself, Casey?
I would honestly probably just hold my hand and be like, you're gonna be okay. It's gonna get really ugly and really scary, but you're gonna be okay. Because I didn't know for so many moments I didn't know.
Yeah. And just appreciating yourself for what you're going through as well, right?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Sometimes you still have those little thoughts creep into you. Maybe not as much as how they used to back then. You know, what if like signs of the illness start to show again? Maybe someone doesn't think as much like once you're already at a certain point in your recovery, but you can't help like having those little thoughts. Yeah.
Do you think it was hard or easy to appreciate yourself for what you were going through during that time?
Yeah.
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 Yeah. It was overwhelming, right? We were going. I was going through so many emotions at that time, depression, anxiety, and then the what ifs questions always came to me, and there were times when I would tell myself that you got it, girl, right? You're young. You cannot be looking, you should look forward. But but those emotions were very scary emotions. Yeah. And till date, I go through this. I think it resonates probably with everyone out here, right?
Mm-hmm.
And those emotions are okay to have.
Yeah.
I think I want to make that clear to everybody too.
Yeah, it's natural.
Matt, what advice would you go back and tell yourself now that you've seen the other side of this?
It's hard to trust the body that got cancer. You know, I had this body that I trusted would be healthy and bring me through all of life, and then it got cancer out of nowhere. So there was some just mistrust with myself about, you know, what's going to be the path going forward. And anxiety is created, I think, around, you know, you get sick again, or you just don't feel right, or a blood test comes back and it's slightly out of the green, and all of a sudden your mind starts to go to the worst place because you don't trust your body. Because last time you trusted your body, it got sick, got very sick. So I think if I could go back to that moment of diagnosis, talking to a version of myself that was really scared and angry and frustrated and just unsure about the future, I think I would tell myself, trust the process, and it's not time to panic until it's time to panic. And even today, you know, I'll get blood work done and a value might be a little bit outside of the norm, and all of a sudden I just start going to that place in my head. But I wish I could go back and tell myself, it's gonna be okay if you trust the process, trust the team, trust the science.
Definitely. Well, Matt, Samantha, Alfredo, and Casey, I want to thank you so much for being a part of this important conversation on the topic of mental health. And hopefully we can go out there to use our voices and build a stronger community for survivorship. And in the tradition of being on Share, I would love to share a toast with you all. So cheers to survivorship. Cheers to celebrating you, and cheers to a healthy and happy future. Cheers.
Cheers.
Today, I have joining me Julie Larson, a licensed clinical social worker who has spent the majority of her career in oncology supportive care. Julie, thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, thank you for having me.
So our conversation today is focused on mental health and emotional well-being, and our guests are having a wonderful conversation on it. So I wanted to ask you, why is it so important to take care of yourself emotionally during a time of a medical diagnosis such as cancer?
When someone is first diagnosed with cancer, you automatically think about treating the disease. Cancer is a threat, right? And so it makes sense that we focus on getting rid of the cancer, But the truth is that for cancer patients, and honestly, their loved ones and family members, that threat registers physically in our body, and it registers emotionally. And feelings like overwhelm and uncertainty and fear make it much more difficult to focus. It impacts our ability to make decisions. The way that we experience that stress in our bodies, whether that's a zing, or like an agitation, or the heaviness of dread and loss and sadness, all of that definitely is uncomfortable. And it affects people's ability to sleep or stay present in relationships. So you ask, why is it important that we address or think of our mental health? Yeah. Well, the work of taking care of ourselves mentally and emotionally begins with becoming increasingly aware of how we're being affected, and then finding what's working and what's not working, and understanding that along the way. And when we do that, we don't only feel better, but we act and we think smarter.
That's great. At times, cancer patients, survivors, caregivers, and other loved ones can sit with many, many feelings all at once. Mm-hmm. So what are some ways to make space and validate every feeling that could occur?
So many feelings. And what a interesting and kind of complex experience to have two conflicting feelings at one time, which I think a lot of people, certainly in my office, when I, illuminate that or notice that, people are like, yes, that resonates, because we can feel so much sadness and anger that this is happening in our lives. And then at the same time, oddly grateful for all the people who are showing up and loving us through. And that's really conflicting to feel two feelings at the same time. So what do we do with that? I have a bias that I believe that relationships in our lives are probably one of the most critical factors in mitigating the decline of mental health. Mm-hmm. And so what I would say is that if people can find safe spaces that include a relationship with someone that feels comfortable to talk it out, to say what they're feeling and what they're thinking, we begin to kind of unravel our worry and our distress in a much more organic way. Mm-hmm. And we also feel less alone. And those relationships can be with a loved one or with a family member. They may also be with support groups or things like that. And, I'm sitting here as I'm saying this with relationships, thinking of people who are doing this alone.
Yeah.
There are those survivors. I have them in my office who are both the patient and their own primary caregiver. Mm-hmm. And so I want to take a bigger kind of look at that word relationship and say that, certainly I've learned in my career how valuable a furry friend is, a pet, right? How important faith might be, our prayer, and nature, right? And that those things, if we look at them in a kind of different way, are also relationships.
Yeah.
That you turn to.
Yeah.
And you talk through what's going on.
So you just mentioned pets, support group, maybe your faith, and those all fall under the category of skills that survivors can really focus on in achieving better mental health outcomes. So what are some additional things that survivors can hone in on to develop some skills that will help them through their mental health journey?
I start pretty much all of my sessions with people who walk through my door. People walk through my door feeling like, okay, I feel there's an acute stress in my life, right? This diagnosis of cancer, and I'd like it to go away. And I don't want to feel this way. I want to feel good. I want to feel positive. I want to feel hopeful. I want to feel optimistic. And I often say, and maybe this is hard to hear, although honest, it may not be realistic, to think that this anxiety and this worry and this uncertainty is going to completely go away. I think it's going to live there with you. And perhaps a goal or a hope that we can share together is that we're going to move it along so that it can linger in the background as you focus on what's right in front of you, that you learn how to surf the waves of uncomfortable feeling. But the first step, and when you talk about skills, the first step I always say to people is I challenge them to cultivate a habit of noticing themselves. What does that mean? That sounds really abstract. It means checking in and saying, how am I doing? How am I? How am I right now? What am I thinking about? What are those thoughts that are just nagging in my mind? What is my body doing? Right? I feel this like gut punch in my stomach, or I feel really keyed up and stressed, or I just feel really flat and heavy and I don't want to get out of bed. How am I doing?
And do you encourage people to write these down? Do you encourage people to really confide in someone that they can share these feelings with openly?
I think that, talking it out helps us to better understand ourselves. And we kind of figure that out as we go. I think that writing can be an incredible resource. And perhaps writing almost in the reflection, right? Writing is a way to get it out of our head and onto paper and kind of release it. But I think there's something quite powerful and profound even in looking back. Oh my goodness, I'm reading an entry from 3 months ago. Wow. And what an incredible gift to yourself to watch that change within yourself. I think that there's also skill building and growing our feeling word vocabulary, right? If everything is traumatic, if everything is miserable, if everything is stressful, it becomes more tricky to know what to do to take care of it. That if we get very specific about what we're feeling. I am feeling overwhelmed, or I am feeling impatient. I am feeling lonely. Just automatically in being more specific with what we're feeling.
So identifying your feeling,
Grow that feeling word vocabulary.
act upon that feeling, and reflect upon that feeling is just as important.
You know, and this is kind of evolves over the course of getting to know somebody. And there's skill building and kind of a self-awareness, and there's skill building and kind of grounding and quieting our bodies. And that, we often want to immediately in our culture think, and solve and, figure this out, right? And that's our initial jump to. But really, sometimes the first thing that we need to do is get some calm in our body and get quiet. And then we can address that. And when you go back and you look at that, so often underneath an uncomfortable feeling is an unmet need. So we're not going to know how to take care of ourselves or what we're needing until we look it in the eye. So I'm really lonely. What do we need? Oh, I'm needing connection. I'm needing understanding. I'm needing companionship. I'm just bored. I'm needing joy. I'm needing something to do with my time. So we have to look at that to then understand what we need underneath it.
What are the benefits of having a mental health provider as part of your care team?
I think that, for some people, finding a mental health professional does open windows and kind of bring something new to their perspective or the way they're thinking or reframing their experience. I know many people who find that journey in their close, intimate friend groups. I know many people who discover and unlock doors when they finally enter a support group. And they're sitting among peers who get it and are walking the walk. So maybe it's a mental health professional in my office, and please keep walking in my door. But maybe you discover what you need at a church service, and it just changes something for you. Or you discover what you need in a support group. I think what happens in therapy is different for each person.
Yeah.
And I have to be flexible and really tune in to that. Some people that I work with truly need that space.
Yeah. So it's really tuning into finding a need that may be void in their life, or connecting them with others that could really help their mental health. So you're that person that just listens, first of all, and then really guides this person to what can help them out.
We want someone to feel better, right?
Yeah.
We want them to feel better than they did when they began, right? And that journey to that space looks different for each person. And sometimes it's talking it through. Sometimes it's someone that challenges you.
Yeah.
Is there a different way to look at this?
So let's talk about some resources really quick.
Yeah.
What are some recommendations that you have that the audience may be looking for to really start or enhance your mental health journey? What are the resources that exist out there?
Well, when you say resources, and then you said exist out there, I think of resources in two ways. There's inner resources and there's outer resources, right? So in inner resources, we just already mentioned a notebook or a journal. And I think that can, in fact, be a resource, right? Begin to write, begin to notice your own journey. Because we can feel like nothing's changing. And there are sometimes clients that sit in my office and they don't feel like anything's getting better and it's hard. And I often say it may feel subtle and quiet to you, but I'm wondering if there's quite a lot going on right now. Yeah. So maybe we need to journal. We need to write. Maybe we need to find that group of friends. That is a resource, or that community of people. Maybe you find a mental health professional or the person in your medical care team who has access to what's available in your cancer center. You know, we don't often know. And sometimes for younger survivors, it's the first time they're in a healthcare system, right? They've not been here before. So who are the players in the field? You know, this is the nutritionist. This is the, complementary alternative medicine department. This is, nursing. What do each of the different people do? And then there are incredible, as you know, national organizations that are filled with, reputable information about gathering more data around your specific diagnosis and what resources are out there for you in that way.
Yeah. My final question for you, advocating for yourself and your mental health needs. A lot of people feel embarrassed to do that or don't even know who to turn to or where to start. So what is your advice if someone is out there and they just feel lost in wanting to take back their emotional well-being? How can they advocate for themselves?
Well, I would say, first off, we can feel a degree of distress and we want that to change, right? But beginning to advocate or communicate your needs begins with understanding them yourself. So first off, people need a moment to think, what in the world am I feeling and what do I need? When we know that, maybe we uncover unanswered questions. Like our worry, there's an unanswered question under our worry, and that directs our conversation with our doctor. I need to know what are the statistics around when I am most likely to recur. This is going to help me feel more control. This is going to help me feel more grounded. I need to know what chemotherapy side effects I'm going to experience and how that's going to affect my job and my ability to parent. I need to understand that because I am feeling overwhelmed. I am feeling anxious about that. And when I get the answers to these questions, that might help me to feel more in control. So understanding that. And then I would say if those things do not exist in your system, those support needs that you're wanting, maybe asking why. What are the barriers around that? And then if it doesn't exist for you locally, that doesn't necessarily mean it doesn't exist at all. So then you cast your net wider, right? Where is this nationally? Maybe I find groups in a bigger way. I'm working with a survivor I'm thinking about in Texas, and she so desperately wanted to meet with others that were young and her age and that were having children. And she found a group in Colorado that was exactly what she needed. So, we have that gift now of being able to kind of find things in all different corners of the world. So,
Yeah. We have the gift of technology these days where you can really go out, further and find your people. And speaking of technology, check this incredible lady out on the internet, Julie Larson, LCSW. Julie, I want to thank you so much for being a part of our conversation today. The work that you do is so important to our community, and we really cannot thank you enough. And I would love to have a toast with you, and cheers to everything that you do, and cheers to our survivors and caregivers out there as well.
This is important work.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Thank you for being a part of our conversation today. And remember, every story shared is a life touched. See you soon.